I would just be very specific. I would say, would you like to start over again? Can we do a reset on this and see if we could do it differently this time? How would you feel about starting over again? Is starting over again something you're interested in? See, these are all different ways to phrase it, but you see the difference is I'm not saying, let's start over again. I'm already giving the mother-in-law a level of control, the illusion of control. Hey, it's up to you. And to some extent it is, right? We don't want to make decisions for her. So I'm turning it over to her. So she already now would be what, Olivia? Can you imagine? In a more regulated state, because now she's saying, oh, they're asking me, but I'd like to start over. This is up to me. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Narcissism Decoder. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Mazzella. In today's episode, you'll hear another clip from an interview I did with Olivia, the host of Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin podcast. I bring you into our discussion right at the point where she's asking what to do when you start to recognize narcissistic traits and behaviors in someone who's close to you. We then jump into one of the most confusing and emotionally charged dynamics when a family member begins splitting the family, assigning blame, and refusing to hear other perspectives. Together, we explore what it means to recognize narcissistic traits in these situations and how to manage them. I talk with Olivia about how understanding this can help you stay regulated and engage differently, not by confronting or correcting, but by finding a way back into the other person's subjective world. We also discuss how to find and use your own voice when faced with someone who tries to dominate the emotional space, so you can maintain a sense of stability in the relationship, even in the midst of family chaos. Let me get you right into it. Here's the next clip from that interview. I hope you find it both thought-provoking and useful.
So let's go over to the second camp. The individuals who are seeing this happen, whether it's maybe a parent or a spouse or work relationship or, even a neighbor. I'm thinking of all these different examples in my head. But so let's go over to the other camp now.
Yeah. So the question there, just to reiterate, is if you're with somebody, someone significant in your life, and you're wondering if they too are exhibiting these narcissistic traits, is that what we're thinking about? Or
yeah, exhibiting it, but also when you're seeing these traits exhibit and like come to life and you're like, yes. Oh, this is what they're doing. Okay. The bigger question here is like, okay, as the individual who is either receiving it, witnessing it, whatever it might be,
yes.
How do I then approach that situation?
Okay, I understand the question. And you are right. This is the ideal, that they're identifying the situation and receiving it. That's what you said. Again, Olivia, I pay close attention to words, so forgive me if I dwell on things, but this is so important because seeing it is the first step and understanding what's happening, because immediately that will help cool you down. Because if you don't understand what's going on, you too will get quickly into a dysregulated state of mind. And you will push your opinion or get angry with them or do something that's just going to usually make things worse rather than better. So the first step then is understanding what you're seeing. So how do we understand it? If you buy into anything that I'm suggesting today, you would understand that their behavior is to regulate self-esteem and sense of self. Without the regulation, they collapse. So what that tells us then is what they're doing is not malicious. Mm-hmm. Usually it's not even conscious, believe it or not. Like a lot of people in social media, if you listen to anything out there, will say, they're so destructive, they're so malicious, they intend to hurt you, they gaslight you. They're all different words that they use that the narcissist does. What I've learned, it's not to say that those behaviors that they're describing are not true. They are true. But what I'm really trying to tease out is intentionality. Are they intentional? And remember earlier I said there are different presentations of narcissism, and they depend on the level of this, what went wrong earlier on in life. With the more what we call malignant type of narcissism, yes, then their intent may actually be to manipulate, dominate, control you, okay? But with the majority of the narcissists out there, at least the ones that are in my practice, oftentimes they don't even realize what they're doing because they're just trying so hard to get those supplies and regulate their self-esteem and to feel good again, okay? So if you could just do that, that would be a big first step, is to say, they're doing this to protect a fragile sense of self, and it's not malicious. And if you could do that, it calms you down so that you could do more of what I mentioned and we spoke about earlier, which is the containing and listening and trying to help somebody work through something. Now, I don't mean be a punching bag if in fact they're malicious, okay? And I'm not saying be passively victimized. No, I'm not saying any of that, because sometimes boundaries and setting a firm line is necessary, again, depending on what behavior we're talking about. So the second step would look more like this. If you're in a relationship with somebody, and when you're with these individuals, this is very common, by the way, is the partners of people who have these characteristics. So much of the relationship pivots around the, let's just say, narcissistically disturbed person, okay? So that you are always there for them. And over time, what happens is you lose your voice. You start losing your own sense of self, right? That you lose your own self-esteem, believe it or not, your own identity, because a lot of people get in relationships because they want to have a collaborative approach. Like they want to exist. But when you're with this kind of person, you really don't exist, because the fantasy is always what? The person who has these characteristics is the center of the world. They're the most important thing. So the second step, if there are steps, I'm just being a little overly schematic, would be to start to find your own existence in a relationship like this, which in essence means finding your own voice. Because oftentimes these people can't hear you, because remember, any difference of opinion is such a slight to them, right? Because if you say something, especially if you offer them something valuable, oh, forget it. Like, let's say you try to help them, Olivia, with something, they come to you with a complaint and you try to help them, forget it. They seem like they want help, but the help is so threatening to them that they'll often dismiss it. Like they won't hear you. Sometimes they'll even talk right over you when you're trying to be helpful to them. So finding your own voice, that was step number 2, okay? And the only way to do that, unfortunately, is 1, is to get into your own regulated state. 2, understand what's happening, right? But also not, so here's where I picked up on your words, not absorbing whatever it is, because narcissists are known to project. I don't know if you've ever heard of that word, but whatever is not good in them, they'll put onto you. You know, if they're feeling a certain way, like if they're having an affair, they'll accuse you of not being honest, right? This is what we call projection. So that's another big piece. I could keep going. Let me pause again, because that piece is like not absorbing the projection. In other words, you're not stepping into a role that they're assigning to you, which is a whole nother discussion. But let me hold off there for now, okay?
Okay. So, this is amazing. And I keep thinking of like all different ways I want to take this.
Please.
But on that topic itself, okay, there's kind of 2 questions, they intertwine. But let's say there is a situation where there's something severely right and severely wrong, right? This is ethically right and what occurred, and this is what is not ethically right and also did not occur. So backing someone else who's saying lies or, you know, this or that, but you, for some reason, feel lying to that person as narcissistic.
Wait, let's try to be a little more specific if we can. I don't want to put you on the spot now, but I have a question for you, okay? Can you be a little more specific? Like, what is right and wrong? Like, did you have an example in mind? Because
I do, and I'm trying to use it, but be very...
I got you. I know. You just say it's a prototypical situation where we frequently see something like this.
So this happened with a friend of mine. And she loves her husband. And they're like both of them are like my best friends. So I love them.
Okay.
But there has been times where the mother-in-law or the siblings will do something and it's real extreme and it's not right. They try to paint her in the picture of like, she's the one wrong. She's the problem. She shouldn't be coming to these events, you know, and they'll make up lies about my friend. And it's like, wait, that's not even the case. That's not even what's happening. That's not even the dynamic. But mother-in-law like felt so, and I don't know what the triggering factor was or if it was an accumulation of things, but then a situation arises and...
The triggering factor, just so you know, I don't know anything about this case, but this is what it usually is. Envy, jealousy, competitiveness, with your friend. The mother-in-law feels these ways, but you'll never see that because it comes out in this very distorted way now, where she's being accused of something that just seems bizarre. But God, I'm sorry. I jumped in, but I want to tell you like what's usually the triggering factor.
Let's take a quick break.
Are you tired of feeling like you're walking on eggshells all the time? Do you feel drained, confused, or like nothing you do is ever good enough? Are you stuck in a cycle of elation, then criticism and confusion? If any of this sounds familiar, you're not alone. And that's exactly why I created Office Hours with Dr. Anthony Mazzella. That's me. Office Hours is a low-cost, small group space where you could bring your questions about narcissistic traits and dynamics and the places where you feel stuck. You'll be met with honest, grounded feedback. I'll hold the group with structure, but there's also space for a real conversation. This is a space designed for anyone looking for clarity, insight, and support. If that sounds like you, just click the link in the show notes to join us. Okay, I hope to see you there.
And so like there was this one situation I remember where the brother-in-law did something to my friend. And like it was just an argumentative thing. And I think it was like a personality, from what I know of the story, a personality mismatch. And also from the awareness of what I know, there was alcohol involved and different things, right? A plethora of different things. But he kind of tried to verbally attack her. And everyone else kind of went to the defense, including the mother-in-law initially.
Wow.
And then those people, my two friends, left and the brother-in-law stayed. And time went on. And then all of a sudden, the issue was my friend. And the issue was her son not defending them, or, you know, the issue's back on my friend. And it went deeper and deeper. And then time passed, and many different people. I tried to have conversations with the mother-in-law and be like, you know, here's the baseline. This isn't really what happened, but also that's really hurting that individual. Like you could do a lot of damage to not only the relationship, but also to that person and their character by saying these things that are so extreme, but also so not true. And didn't want to hear it, and like has let it sit. And also,
okay, wait, Olivia, wait, hold on. I don't know what the end question is going to be, but let me jump in right there, okay? So you had this conversation with the mother-in-law, and you said, this isn't what happened, right? This is the reality. Here's problem number one, okay? Why? Because the mother-in-law has a claim on reality. Her reality is the truth. Do you see what I mean by that? So you're coming in, telling her what the reality is, and then you're educating her, saying, look, this could be the consequences if you continue to behave this way. Like you're hurting somebody, as if she really cares if she's hurting somebody. Do you see what I mean by that? So just, we're making believe, like, let's just use this as a hypothetical case. Hypothetically, we could speculate. Let's just say that the mother-in-law has her own narcissistic characteristics, which she may or may not, but just based on what you're describing, it's not too far off. It's not wild speculation, right? Based on the behavior that you're describing. So now you're trying to educate. You're telling somebody who's in sort of one thing, if she has these traits, she has a claim on the truth. And that's why so many of these couples get into arguments about whose reality is right. And that brings us into the whole thing about gaslighting. But gaslighting is a very complicated concept because everybody has a claim on the truth. But so anyway, I wanted to jump in because that moment was hot. I just wanted to show you something that I frequently hear in these narcissistic dynamics and relationships is one is you were telling her the truth. So that's not going to go over well, rather than stepping into her reality first. So at least then you have an opportunity, because if she could feel heard, maybe she can then hear you. So that would be the first thing, is really sitting down, maybe over a course or period of time, to really understand, how did you come to this conclusion about my friend? And then the second thing was, I'm sorry, I don't mean to put it this way, but it's so common. You're giving her like an educational lecture, like an intellectual. It's like an intellectual exercise, like this is what's going to happen. But she's not going to hear that because that implies that she really cares about your friend's feelings. Anyway, I'm sorry, I jumped in again, but that moment was hot and I didn't want to lose it.
No, I love it. And so like that all played out. And now it's been a long time and relationships have been factored, and the mother-in-law is still sitting on saying things about this individual.
Yeah, of course. When you had that conversation with her, you left that conversation feeling what? Good? Like you really reached her and she heard you? Or like, were you talking to a stone wall? Like, where were you when you left that conversation with the mother-in-law?
In real time, for a minute, I was like, oh, she heard me. And then within a week, maybe not even, it was like, oh, wait, maybe I don't think she did, because she's still saying she's the problem, not the mother-in-law's problem.
Yeah.
Everything is on her. And saying these lies that I'm like, lies about the situation, lies about my friend. And to this day.
Wait, Olivia, wait. Hold on. Don't go to the end yet. So your experience right there is very, very common. And I have a podcast on this, which is how do you know if what you're saying is actually penetrating? And it's not by the immediate response, because sometimes someone can disagree with you. And I used to get this quite a bit from my patients, like, Oprah gives better interpretations than you. That is ridiculous. Or that is the most brilliant thing I've ever heard. Thank you so much. Taking notes on it. You have to see what happens over time and if anything changes. That's the only way you'll ever know if what you said actually reached them. And what you're saying is, yeah, it felt good in the moment, like you thought you reached her, which is very common, by the way, especially if someone's nodding and agreeing. But the proof is in what happens next week and the week after that. But God, please, that's what you started to say. Nothing changed.
Nothing's changed. And to this day, now those relationships are kind of completely fractured. Family dynamics are fractured, but also she's still saying things, or the feeling is that she's still saying things because of how other people who are around her, like family members, are responding to things or kind of saying acid. So how would you handle something like that as well, where now there's this really prolonged period, let's say a year?
Now you have to go back. You have to go backwards. That's the only way to handle it. So that's why I wanted to jump in along the way, because I think I've already answered your question, but let me just go over it. The way I would handle that now is I would start over again, and I would get as close as possible to the mother-in-law's subjective experience of her, your friend, right? And that's the work that I do, because I thought your question was going to be not even a question see, narcissists don't change. These people don't change. But you're saying, but how could they change? What would you do now? So once you're in this place, you have to go back to the beginning. And the beginning is getting close to their subjective experience. That's the containing thing that I mentioned earlier. Listening, asking inquisitive questions, letting them know that you could hear them, and validating. Okay, Olivia, you're not validating that your friend did this or did that. You're validating that this was her experience of it, so she could feel heard. And that's when the people become more regulated, when they begin to feel heard. That goes back to the kid who scraped his knee. So that's what I would do. So they need an intervention with the narcissism decoder, right? I'm just kidding. But you see, they need an intervention to start this whole thing over again, to go back to the beginning, where we can contain, validate, ask inquisitive questions. The mother-in-law can feel understood. And only when she feels understood and heard, maybe, and I say maybe because I don't know her, not everybody responds. But then maybe if the trust starts to develop and she feels like you're not going to judge her or tell her what reality is, she could begin to hear an alternative perspective. Because that's one of the main characteristics also that we didn't even discuss with personality disorders. Mm-hmm. One perspective, right? And they stay rooted to it. They have one reality, and they get rooted, and it gets ossified, and they have a hard time opening up their mind to nuances and different opinions. So that stuff has to happen slowly over time. So that's what you would have to do, Olivia, in this situation.
So that being said, is there a difference in too much time has passed to be able to go back to that point and kind of revisit
No,
this?
it's still alive. Listen, it's still alive. You're telling me it's still going on today, right? Mm-hmm. No time has passed, by the way. I'll just tell you that. When one holds on to resentment, and they're resentful, if they're still talking about them or, attacking your friend, or if there's still this rift, because there's not forgiveness. So that tells me this thing is still very much alive. So time is different in the world of personality disorders. And this thing is still alive. Sorry, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that was my question. You answered it. And you highlighted there as well is that if it's still alive due to the rifts or what's going on in dynamic, then to them, it is very much, and like overall situational, still very present. So even though a year, 2 years, whatever it might be, might have passed, it is completely okay to say, okay, we're starting at ground zero again. We need to come back together and kind of act like we're having this conversation for the very first time.
Yeah. And again, I'm a stickler for words, so I would just be very specific. I would say, would you like to start over again? Can we do a reset on this and see if we could do it differently this time? How would you feel about starting over again? Is starting over again something you're interested in? See, these are all different ways to phrase it, but you see the difference is I'm not saying let's start over again. I'm already giving the mother-in-law a level of control, the illusion of control. Hey, it's up to you. And to some extent it is, right? We don't want to make decisions for her. So I'm turning it over to her. So she already now would be what, Olivia? Can you imagine? In a more regulated state, because now she's saying, oh, they're asking me, but I'd like to start over. This is up to me. Does that make sense? Yeah.
No, it does. I'm like, oh, that's good. Because
Yeah.
I want to flip that a little bit too, is what happens if that person goes, no.
Okay, so then you fall into the category of 99% of the content that's out there on narcissism, which is this whole thing about creating boundaries, going, what's it called, stonewalling, I think it is, going no contact. These are all very common phrases that are used with narcissism. If you're in a relationship with somebody like this, you need to get, create some space. So if she says no, then the answer is no. And then it's up to your friend to figure out how to begin to create a life separate from her or the family. And I don't know, that gets complicated because I don't even know what the involvement is with your friend's husband, which is her, the mother-in-law's son, obviously, if I'm following all this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's his relationship with his mother, right? And then all that would have to be negotiated in a very sensitive way. And how much pressure would, I'm just, again, hypothetically, I know nothing about this. Is he going to put pressure on your friend to continue to have some kind of relationship with his mother and go there for the holidays? Is he going to respect his wife and her decision? Is he going to keep away from the family? See, all of these things are now under discussion. This is what we have to figure out. Because no contact is not as simple. That's how people end up coming to me, by the way, is they come to the podcast or to me because what they realize is the advice that 99% of the time is touted, which is stonewalling or distance or boundaries or no, it doesn't always work. It's not that simple. You can't always go no contact, especially if you have entanglements with these people. They're in your life, they're in-laws, or you have children with them, or finances that are commingled. This stuff gets really complicated.
And it's also, let's also put on the table, you might not want to just go no contact.
Exactly. Yes.
I think that's a very important thing to also acknowledge. You might be like, based on all this information that's out there, like, okay, I have to go no contact. It's the only path forward at this point based on all these other conversations. But it's like, deep down, do you really want no contact for, especially if it's family members or whatever, the rest of your life? Like, what
Exactly.
will like? And I think, and I want to hear your opinion on it, but that is very okay to acknowledge. It might be what you need right now. I don't want to say that isn't what you need at that moment, but it's okay to also acknowledge that isn't what you want the rest of your life. And how do you work through that?
Yeah, it's such an important point that, again, this is how many people find me, is that they do not want to go. To your point, that is such an astute observation. Like, this person has been in my life 30 years. We have kids together. So then the question becomes, how do I exist in a relationship like this? Thanks so much for listening. I hope this conversation gave you some new ways to think about complex family dynamics and how to approach someone who may be creating conflict. I tried to illustrate how to approach them in a more open way, not by taking control, telling them what should happen next, or proving a point, but by listening, what we call containing, and responding with greater understanding. If you have any thoughts or questions, as always, I'd love to hear from you. Your reflections always help shape these discussions. If this spoke to you and you're curious to learn more about all issues related to narcissism, please support the show by subscribing so you don't miss what's coming next. And even more importantly, take a moment to leave a review. Reviews make the podcast easier for others to find, which helps the show grow. The more the show grows, the more I can invest in creating thoughtful content that supports you in understanding and navigating your experiences with narcissism. Okay, thanks for being here with me. I'm grateful we got to explore this one together. Until next time, take care of yourself. Bye for now. Disclaimer alert. The Narcissism Decoder podcast is provided for general information purposes only. The content presented in this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any psychological condition related to narcissism. The content on this podcast should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. For specific advice pertaining to narcissism or any other psychological condition, you could reach me directly. I am an experienced mental health practitioner who is always taking on new patients. If you would just like a consultation, I can do that too.